So today's training is being recorded. As soon as the link is ready, we'll be adding it to the trainings page on the Give STL Day website so that you can access it afterwards, or if you're not able to stay the whole time, or if you missed the Q&A, it'll be fully available to you. So today's training is case development for Give STL Day and beyond. We are very excited to have Linda Haley, President and CEO of Let's Build Hope, here today. So today we're going to be talking about what makes your organization special, trying to answer that question. And in this training, you're going to learn why a case for support is necessary and how to build one. Linda will explain the need for a case for support and who to include in the process, including how to work with finance and programs. She'll go over examples of potential global and individual case outcomes and how to apply these concepts to Give STL Day and beyond. So Linda, I will go ahead and let you take it away. Everybody feel free to drop questions in the chat as Linda goes along, and we will do a Q&A once she's finished. Linda?
Great. Thank you so much, Emily. Hello, everybody. Good to not see you. I wish I could see you. I was just telling them before we got on how much I enjoy delivering the content and webinars, but I miss being able to see your faces and just get your energy and share with you what I know is the thing that we're all trying to do, which is change the world, help people have a better life and have our community be a better place. So today we're going to talk about case development for Give STL Day and beyond. And so I'm going to start you just right off the bat. Some of you are going to know some of this content already, so just roll with me on the parts that you already have. Feel free to put in the chat if there's anything else that you can think of you'd like to share or add. Totally happy to have everybody weigh in. So the first thing is just to understand what a case for support is, or a case for funding. And really it is your sort of raison d'etre, like why you exist. It's your organizational why. That's the case itself. And then a case statement, of course, is just a document that provides the rationale and justification for fundraising. We're great. We do these wonderful things. We help kids, we save puppies, whatever we do. And this is why you should support our cause. The thing I will tell you on the bullet number 3 is that people don't often realize that you need a case for support for your annual fundraising. If you've ever worked on a capital campaign or endowment or comprehensive campaign, there's always a beautifully laid out case statement. It's usually designed by a marketing firm, and lots of thought and process has gone into creating this case for this big building that we're building, or building our endowment to 25 million. But the case for support for the annual fund seems to just get beeped over. Like, people seem not to understand how important it is to understand what you're selling to your constituent. Like, what is it that I can offer you for your gift? And I don't mean things, right? I mean, how is your gift going to change or save a life or have an impact? So yes, you definitely need a case for support for the annual fundraising efforts. So let's get that underway. I hope some of you, if you have a case for support, will you just write that in the chat? If you don't have one, that's totally fine. This is a great way for you to get started on this effort. So what's the point of having one? And I will tell you, the annual fund case for support, the amount of money that you need to raise every year, is a usually pretty long document. It's too long to share with individual donors, not really meant for that. It's really meant more for you to describe for yourselves in organizational language, right? In compelling language, everything that you do, and then put dollar figures to those things. So the first thing it does is provide that clear understanding of the need, the financial need that your organization has based on the programs that you offer and the ways that you change and save lives. And then it gives lots of ways that the donors can participate. Because if you just have one way, sometimes the donors are like, well, I'm not really interested in that way. What else do you have? Okay. The second thing that it really acts as is the organizational script. And I don't know about you guys, I've had a lot of boards in my many 28 years of fundraising. And every once in a while, I have a board member just go off the reservation. I remember one time I worked in an organization, we were statewide in the state of Missouri. We had 5 locations, and we were she and I together with a potential donor, and the donor's nephew had autism. And so he lived in Las Vegas, and the board member says to this person, oh yeah, we serve in Las Vegas. And I'm like, what? No, we don't. What? Where are you going, right? Okay, where are you going? No, we don't. And so she'd gotten excited, and she sort of in her mind had, we can go anywhere, right? And so she didn't have her sort of organizational script memorized and kind of took us off the reservation. And so the organizational script really helps you and your staff and your board really agree together. This is how we're going to talk about our nonprofit. The other beautiful thing that happens when you develop a case for support for the annual fund is it gives you language you can use in everything. And then you get this nice, clear, clean, layered messaging across everything that you do. And I'll talk to you later about all the ways you can use the language in the case. Because when you really start thinking about writing one, if you don't have one or you don't have one that's fully developed, it's going to take you a minute, right? You're going to have to spend some time doing a case session. You're going to have to do the writing and the editing. It takes some time, but it is worth it. Cases usually will last about 3 years. You will have to review them each year, right? For changes in numbers, addition or subtraction of programs, anything else that you think, oh, we wish we would have lined that out a little bit more, but it is pretty good for about 3 years. And it is great. This last one I love. It's a great orientation tool for your board because it is going to cover all the main things that your board members need to know from that 50,000 foot level. And so when someone is new, a case for support, albeit a long document, is something good to give them. All right, so how do we build one? Okay, how do we write one? Well, first thing you don't do is write it by yourself. Okay, bad idea. The case session where you spend a half a day or a day together involves a lot of people because you're going to need input from many of them and you want to provide some training for some of them. And so let's look here at the team of people that you want to include when you do a case session, right? Because you're going to want to talk about what you're going to write before you actually do it. First of all, you have to have the program leader, okay? The person who really runs the programs. And I know for some of you at the smaller nonprofits, you'd be like, well, that's me. And I do the development and everything else. So invite yourself to the meeting, okay? You're going to need the program people in the room because they're going to tell each of you, here are what the programs do in detail. Here's how many people they serve. Here's how they serve them. Here's the challenges around the programs. Here's how they're funded. You're going to need all that detail. All right, then you're going to want somebody who handles finance. And very commonly with our clients, some of our smaller clients do not have finance people. They'll have a board member like their treasurer who does the finances, or they'll have a contractor who does their finances. These people need to be at the meeting because you are going to need to slice and dice your budget. And you don't want to be doing that without an expert in the room, and that's the finance person, okay? The next thing you're going to want, and this one may sort of blow your mind a little bit, is you're going to want board members in the case development session, okay? You're like, whoa, Linda, why would I want the board to come and sit for a day or a half a day? Well, because the board needs to understand sort of how the sausage is made, okay? Why in the world do we need a cases for support? What is it? How did you come up with these numbers? It's very good for a couple of them, not the whole board, but just a couple of them to be in the meeting, because when they see it, they'll begin to understand. And the beauty of this is when you take your case to the full board, they're going to be your advocates. They're going to say to the rest of the board members, guys, we worked on this. We took it apart. We put it back together. I feel confident. And there's nothing like that peer-to-peer sharing that increases confidence in your board. If you have a separate leader, an ED or a CEO, that person needs to be in the room because, of course, they're setting the vision for the future with the board and also making sure that's the way they want to talk about the programming that you do. And then obviously the development and marketing people, because at the end of the day, we are the ones that have to talk about our programs and provide these giving opportunities to our donors. So think about bringing all these people together. That's going to be an important part of what you do. All right, so how do I write one? Well, first off, you're going to need to start with the budget. And people are a little surprised at that. I will usually say to a client, tell me your biggest program. And they'll explain, the program person will explain that whole program to me. And then I'll go immediately to the finance person and say, how is that program funded? Is it fully funded? Is it partially funded? Is it government funded? Is it grant funded? Is it individual donor funded? Do we just fund it the best that we can? How do we pay for it? So you're going to need to make sure you look at everything that you do from a program perspective and say, what do we have to pay for? Obviously, if you don't have to pay for it, you don't want to raise money for it. However, you do want it in the case, even if you don't need to raise money for it, because you're still going to need to talk about it. The donors are going to want to know all the things that you do. Now, this second bullet, boy, put a big star by this and make a note. You're going to need to think about including overhead in your annual operating opportunities for your donors. And I know many of us write grants as one of the main ways that we raise money. And the grantors will tell you, we'll let you have 10% overhead, or we'll let you have 15% overhead. But very often your overhead might be on a program 30 or 40%. The beauty of individual fundraising, where you're working with individual donors, is you don't have those strictures. So what we want you to do is, if we say this program makes up 60% of our budget, then we want to take 60% of our overhead, include that, and then slice and dice it. That way, you're not out trying to raise money for, oh, we need a new finance person, or we need a development coordinator, or we need somebody to pay to keep the lights on. Nobody wants to pay for that. So you can wrap it in, right, to these asks by pushing that overhead down, and you don't have the strictures that you have when you write grants. Now, when you do grant budgets, you have to do what they say. But for your case for support, you can say sort of all in, full freight, this is how much this program costs per person that we serve, per hour of therapy that we provide, per animal that we save from being euthanized. Like, all these things can be sliced and diced so you know exactly how much they cost, and that's really important. Now, this next one gets challenging because we all have programs that are a little sexier and a little easier to fund. And obviously that's important. The donors have a tendency to sort of lean toward those programs. And so you're going to have to make sure that the compelling programs are part of what you talk about as the lead in your case. But if you have things that are tougher, you don't have to run away from those. Sometimes you have to look more deeply into the budget, right? So you may do some programming for adults. And sometimes people struggle with giving money for adults. They don't struggle too much for kids and puppies. When you talk about adults, they're like, well, they're adults. They should be able to figure it out. Kind of, it's almost an unconscious bias. And so sometimes you might say, well, what inside the budget do we pay for? Do we provide meals for those people every day? Do we provide meals beyond what the government funding support is for them? Could we provide a food program that might be a little bit meatier and more exciting than just funding an adult in our program, right? So you're going to have to sort of think through how you're going to do that. And then you're going to be able to know which parts of your case will be the easiest to provide to donors, to sell to donors. The next thing you want to think about is a theme. And I'm going to show you some sample themes here in just a second, but I want you to think just a little bit about the kinds of things that come up. And I will tell you, again, when you do your case session, especially when you listen to your program officers talk about the programs, very often they're the ones who will give you a theme, because they'll say, I always think about it like this. And then they'll say some profound, wonderful thing and this wonderful phrase. And you'll be like, oh, that's it. That's it. And most of the time, you guys all will know, oh, that's it. That's how we want to talk about what we do. But you can also think about things like, is it an anniversary year, right? Is this our 30-year anniversary? You know, maybe 30 years of saving kids, 30 years of turning the world, whatever it is. You can think about that. What do the next few years hold? Do you have a really cool vision? If you have a vision for the future, like a lot of our clients do 10-year impact statements, and they'll say, we're going to do this really exciting thing. Very often the theme is in there, okay? If you have something new that's interesting, if you have a new location that, is something that the donors are really going to be turned on by, there might be a lot of others, but a theme is going to be helpful. And I said earlier, cases usually last about 3 years, and the theme is the reason. That's kind of their shelf life. At the end of 3 years, you kind of go, yeah, this is getting a little dull. We've kind of been talking about this sort of fork in the road thing that we help our clients do, or whatever your theme is. And that's when you're going to want to refresh it and potentially rewrite it. Okay. All right. Some more things. Have you completed a 10-year impact statement, which is really kind of like a 10-year SMART goal, something that's like by 2032, we're going to have done X. Like, I'm on the board at Chad's Coalition, and part of our 10-year impact statement is we will reduce teenage suicide attempts by 50% by 2032, right? So if you think about that, you're like, ooh, there might be a theme in there, because that's a powerful vision, right? Changing the world or saving one life at a time, 2032. You're going to work on what a cool theme would be. You are going to want to think about things that you'll need to cover. I don't know about you guys. I wish I could see you raising your hands. How many of you can sit down and write a 20-page document without a break? I cannot, right? I need a break. I need to do it in pieces. It's too much for me. So we're going to show these different sections that we normally use when we write a case for support, just to make sure that you cover everything, and also that you can sort of write what you can handle at the time. Like the history section, which is usually pretty short and pretty easy. Sometimes if I can't kind of get started, I'm looking at that white blank piece of paper, that blinking computer screen. I'm like, just write the history. It's easy, 2 or 3 paragraphs, one and done, right? You're in and you're out. And so we'll talk about those sections here in a moment. Now, if you haven't ever read this book, Making a Case Your Donors Will Love by Jerry Panas, P-A-N-A-S, I'm going to suggest, especially if you've never written a case before, that you get the book and you read it, okay? Sometimes it's a little harder to find. Jerry passed, I don't know, 2 or 3 years ago, and his books have been a little tougher to find, but usually if you go on Amazon or do a little Googling, you can find them for not too much. If you can't, let me know, because I think I've got some copies here. I give them away and get them back and whatever. But this thing is simple. It's a short read, and it will remind you about kind of the next bullet, the journey that you're going to take the donor on, this emotional journey. We say at Let's Build Hope, we try to keep the language between 6th and 10th grade language. We try to keep it low. And you're like, well, Linda, why? We're really smart. We all have PhDs. We should be writing this at, 14th grade, 16th grade, as high as we can. No, because when people read or hear things that are very intellectual, they get in their heads, right? Where does giving come from? Not your head, right? It comes from your heart. So the more you can simplify the language, the more emotional you can make it, and that will move them. And I always say to our clients, if you read this case and you don't feel anything, we got it wrong. We got to go again, right? Because we're trying to evoke emotion in people and to get them to go, man, I can't even say why. I just really want to help. That's donors working from their limbic brain, right? And that's the part of the brain that does not have access to language, but does make your decisions. That's emotional. There's real biology behind fundraising, behind philanthropy. So remember, this is not a term paper. You are trying to make a case that will move your donors closer to your nonprofit and hopefully closer to some financial support. All right, now we're getting into a little bit of detail. I'm going to give you this screen first, and then we're going to reference it a little bit later when we get into how to make your case for Give STL Day specifically. First of all, we love a crooked number at Let's Build Hope. And there's a reason for that. And you're seeing these numbers on the screen. We want you to show compelling financial opportunities at many levels. And when you look at these numbers, you're going to have donors say things like, Linda, why is it that weird 3,155 number? Like, why didn't you just say, give us $5,000? Here's what you say. That's not how much it costs, right? Okay, when you talk to a donor, you want to say to them, $67, not $65, not $75, $67 provides 1 hour of therapy. And if they say, why is it a weird number? You say, that's how much it costs, full freight, all in. The donors love the idea that we know our numbers, that we actually know what things cost. How many of you have seen, I know you have, you get an appeal digitally or in the mail, and it says $50 does this, and $100 does that, and $250 does this. And don't you have a moment where you think, it's probably not $100. Nothing costs a flat $100, right? $97.34, $103.20, not $100. So we love these crooked numbers because it shows you've done your work, all right? So you see 4 different options here, and I just made these up, and we're going to use some of them later just to give you a little more information about how to use your case. $67 provides an hour of therapy. Another great thing about crooked numbers is it really helps you upgrade a donor. Let's say you have a donor who's been giving $25 or $35 2 or 3 years in a row. If you send them an appeal and it says, you've been regularly giving $35 to help our kids. This year, would you consider a gift of $67 to provide 1 hour of therapy for one of our kids and help change their lives? Now the donor is not thinking about the ask. They're thinking about the child. They're thinking about the change they can make with their philanthropy, even with a small, simple gift, right? And so that's one of the goals of these numbers, is to say, the more we can tell our donors exactly what things cost and connect those dollars to outcomes, to people, to changes in lives, that's when things start to really get exciting for the donor, because like, oh my gosh, I can provide all the software for 5 classrooms. What does that actually do? Well, if the kids are learning to build video games, right, that might be their professions when they grow up, that's life-changing, right? It doesn't just feel like, would you give us $10,000 because we're doing good work? And I know you guys all do good work. I do, but that's a challenge. We're all doing good work, and the donors want to know what good work and how does my dollar really move the needle at your nonprofit? Okay, does that make sense? I hope so. All right, let's keep going. Maslow's. Now, y'all went to college, I'm sure, so you remember Maslow's from back in the day, probably your first psych class, all right? And Maslow talks about the fact that, you know, we all have to deal with our basic needs, those basic things like food and water and shelter and healthcare and safety. Notice those are at the bottom. And then at the very top is self-actualization. One of my colleagues always says, you know, like being closer to God, or, you know, those kinds of things. It's much easier to fundraise the lower you get on the pyramid, okay? Donors are much more easily moved when they think, wow, if I provide this money, someone's going to be fed, right? Someone's going to be educated, and that's going to change their life. Someone's going to have a roof over his head. That's the kind of thing that donors are moved by very regularly. And the higher you get up the pyramid, the harder things are to share with donors to get them really excited about. So as you're building your case, just keep Maslow in mind. Just remind yourself all the time, wow, this is, you know, this is pretty heady stuff. I need to find a way to get this down to a simpler level. All right, so here's the section. And you guys, Emily will share this PowerPoint with you afterwards. I also have this in a document, so if you want it in a document, I can send it to you. This is what you can actually sort of print out or open up and really start working on your case. And do the easy stuff first. First off, always in the case, you have the basics. Write your mission down, write your vision down, write your values down. If you have a 10-year impact statement, write that down. You got to have the basics in there. Everything is built on that. Who you are, what you believe in, where you're going, right? And what's your outcome in the next 5 or 10 years. The second thing that I find very easy is to write the history. Now, be careful, guys. Some of you have long and very storied and exciting histories, but the donors usually don't want a long story about history. They want a paragraph or 2 or 3 that says, you know, Linda Haley started Let's Build Hope at her kitchen table, right? And now there's 10 years later, 14 people, you know, working with nonprofits to change the world, right? They don't really want pages and pages of, you know, me in my yoga pants, right? They don't care about that, okay? So remember to make that nice and easy. The next one is really, really important, and you might want to write this little acronym PSO down. The funding opportunity is what you're trying to get at in the case. And you're going to use these 3 pieces to help guide the development of the case. You're going to develop the problem, okay? What's going on out there that's a problem? You're going to provide the solution, right? Okay, this is what we do, these fantastic programs that we have that provide the solution to this problem we have in our community. And then the opportunity, right? The funding opportunity. And that's what the donors can do to help you solve the problem. Okay, so problem, solution, opportunity, PSO. All right, just a great, easy little acronym to remember. I will give you some really important feedback here. Do not spend pages and pages on the problem. Okay, donors are going to get overwhelmed if you give them the enormity of this huge problem, especially if you're dealing with things like homelessness, hunger, Alzheimer's, autism. These are big social problems, right? They're big things, right? People with disabilities moving around in our community and how they are empowered or not. These are big problems. So if you make the problem too big, and I only have a couple $100s to offer you, I'm going to get overwhelmed with your problem and I'm going to give up. Because I'm like, oh, my $50 isn't going to make any difference, right? Because look at how many people that are homeless in Missouri. And oh my gosh. So it's not that you can't pepper a few numbers in there, but you got to keep that careful. The thing I'll give you to kind of help you clarify that in your mind is there's a commercial that came on around the holidays for animal cruelty and sort of helping animals. And there was a dog and his bones were sticking out and like Sarah McLachlan singing in the background. And they showed this dog for literally like, you know, 50 seconds or 60 seconds of the 90-second commercial. It was awful. And I'm like running for the clicker trying to change the channel because I'm watching this terrible thing. And they gave me about 10 seconds of solution and opportunity. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm so frustrated. I just want to change the channel because I can't stand staring at this problem, right? What I would have done is just a flash of the dog that had struggled, and then the whole minute of the commercial being about the wonderful things the organization does to solve these problems so that you have a fun, healthy dog running through the field with its owner, right? That would be showing a lot of solution and opportunity and not so much problem. So PSO is really important. You are going to want to create some urgency in your case. Otherwise, it's going to be like, well, I would give, but I don't really need to give right now. Okay, I'll get to it at some point. Data helps a lot with urgency, right? So when you do show some of those emotional numbers, right? X number of kids don't have school supplies in St. Louis right now, and we're reaching, 84,000 of the 90,000 kids that don't have them and changing their lives. And a gift of $53 will make sure that one kid in one school has school supplies today, right? Problem, solution, opportunity. Give that urgent piece of information, that data, and then back it up quickly with your solution, your programs, and your opportunity. Is the organization up to the challenge of fixing the problem, right? So this is when you start really gushing. You want to really talk about your programs, and our programs are better than all the other programs, and here's why, and here's our secret sauce, and here's how many kids we're serving, and 99% of the people who go through our program have a life change. Show some of that data here. Again, careful on data because that's a head thing and you want heart, but that data does back up your efficacy. We can do this and we can do it well. So spend some time really laying out those programs and making sure that when your donors are reading information about you, it really does brag on your programming, because my instinct is that's what we're all most proud of. Some other things that you're going to want to think about and include in your case, you won't want to name your competitors, and you may not love that word, and I know we don't like to think of ourselves as competitors, but in the philanthropic marketplace, we are going to have to show how our after-school program is different than all the other ones that are out there. Otherwise, the donors are going to be like, well, this one serves more kids, so I'll just give over there, right? So you are going to have to show how you're unique, your unique selling proposition. And why should we get the gift? What is it about our nonprofit that really makes it special? This is another thing that's helpful when your board members are in the case session, because they're seeing it from the outside. And sometimes we're so close to it as people who work in the nonprofit that we can't really see why we're so special and unique. We know it, but it's almost like rote. But then they'll tell you, well, the reason I joined the board, right? Or the reason I give. And that really shows you that's how the community is sort of seeing you as special and why you should receive support. Now, this next one is pretty big. You might want to put a big star by this one and circle it. When you fundraise, you are always going to have at some point, if you're doing it right, objections, right? Your programs cost too much. Why aren't you serving everyone who needs you? How come you don't have a facility that you own? Why do you keep having turnover in staff? Okay, they're going to ask you things. And over time, you're going to have a few objections that come up again and again and again. So you don't want to write the objection down, but you want to have an answer for it so that you can easily and smoothly answer it if you're with a donor. And here's the other thing. Your board members are going to hear those same objections. If they've read your case, right? Well, why does it cost so much for your after-school program when this one over here is only $200 a kid and yours is $3,000? You better have a good answer. And the answer may be, we do really significantly deep computer training and programming for kids that's going to cause them to actually get a job skill even when they're young. But it is more expensive because of all the technology, right? So you need to have that objection answered. So list out what the objections are when you're doing the case session, and then talk about the kind of language that you'd like to use and have the organization use when you answer those potential objections. One of the last things you're going to do is talk about the ways that donors can help. And that's not just the money, okay? You will want to lay out all your volunteer opportunities, right? Don't create them if they're not there, but if you need volunteers in your programs, if you need volunteers for your special event, if you need people to stuff envelopes, you can lay out those opportunities. You can talk about the door opening. If you know somebody else who might really love our cause, you can talk about following you on various social media platforms and giving you likes and sharing your messaging. There's a lot of ways that donors can help. And I always want to have a lot of cards in my hand. My mentor used to say to me, Linda, start with getting them to say yes to something, right? And so how many of you would be, all right, people will follow you on social media. That's an easy one. No risk, no problem. It's an easy one. They can say yes. he used to say to me, just get them shaking their heads yes. And the more they do that, the more they'll be open as you get closer to an opportunity to give. So just think about the various ways they can help, including the dollar figures like we showed you earlier. Okay, now here's some titles or themes. You will have seen some of these nonprofits in our communities. These nonprofits have been clients of Let's Build Hope. And I put them up there because I want you to be able to see some themes. And I'm going to talk about them a little bit just so you can look at them. And I hope that each of you are marinating on your own themes right now. Like, what kinds of things would we say about ourselves? I would love at the end, if you guys want to share some of those, I'd love to hear them, because sometimes I hear great ones that inspire me as well. Provident, you guys know Provident, they're a counseling mission, and they have a lot of other great mental health things. And they have a case called Navigating to Hope, which I think is really great, because when people have mental health issues, sometimes it can be pretty dark and it can be pretty heavy. And if your case feels dark and heavy, it's going to overwhelm your donors. But Navigating to Hope sounds like, yeah, it's not a straight line dealing with mental health issues, but you can get there, right? It makes you feel like it can happen. And they've actually taken their case and they have a giving club called Navigators, right? And so the case has become not only the name of the theme of their case, but now they use that language in many of their funding opportunities. So I think that's a cool one. Ready Readers is, an opportunity for volunteer readers, I think 400 or 500 readers a week to read to kids when they're little, because that helps them with their literacy. And we came up with Read Me a Story, because most little kids will come up to you when it's bedtime and say, Mom, will you read me a story? And it's a common thing, and people will resonate. There's that feeling moment, okay? Girls in the Know, I Am Enough, because they work with junior high young women, and young women are always hearing, you're not thin enough, you're not pretty enough, you're not rich enough, you're not this enough. And so the concept of I am enough was really powerful to them. And that, again, it came up in the case session. It was really cool. Queen of Peace Center provides substance use counseling for moms. Their specialty is that you can bring your kiddos with you when you're getting treatment for substance use issues. But the courage to walk up to the door and ask for that help is a lot. And so one of the people in the room said, boy, it takes a lot of courage to walk up the door and knock on it. And I was like, oh, there it is. Dawn figured that out and wrote that theme. And I thought that was cool. Kids in the Middle serves kids and families going through divorce. Still my family, right? Because you're losing, you feel like as a child, you're losing your family because your mom's over here and your dad's over there. But at the end of the day, you're still a family, right? Because the child is part of both sides of that family. Family Forward provides some amazing intervention for kids who've gone through trauma and their families. And I was listening, I actually did write this case, and we were listening to the program people talk, and one of the women says, our family's it's a long journey. They have to climb over the boulders, and then there's gravel in the path, and then there's, a big tree's falling over. And she said, it just seems like obstacle after obstacle, and they just keep navigating their way through this very long journey. And I started thinking, wow, it just starts with a single step, and so the whole imagery of the case is this long, challenging, but hope-filled journey, and it worked out pretty well. And you can even probably go to their website and see that. And then Marion Middle School provides support for young women in a school environment, and it's got a very tight sort of a way that they work with the young ladies and light her way. There was nothing about darkness. They didn't want to talk anything about, some of our young women have been through trauma, had some real challenges in their lives, and they really wanted to talk about light. And so lighting her way, there's lots of cool light imagery. If you go to their website, you'll see that. I just wanted you guys to see a few of actual themes so you could be getting some inspiration and having a moment to think about that. All right, now you started writing your case, you've got all your sections, you kind of get the raw draft together and you think, is this any good? Did I do this right? And so here's some ways you can sort of gauge your own case and say, is it any good? And I think it has to meet what we call the craft criteria. Number one, it has to be credible. The theme that you put out, the language, the information that you're putting out has to be worthy of belief. Something like, if a child gets a good education, his chances for a life of success improve, right? That's a pretty credible statement. So as you read your case, you have to realize the donor is thinking, can you actually do these life-changing things, right? When you get to reality testing, being realistic, you have to sort of say, is the vision that we're painting for you realistic? Can we actually do it, right? So if we served 400 people last year, and we say we're going to serve 4,000 this year, is that real? Can you actually grow that fast? Well, you're going to have to make a heck of a case to get me to believe that. Doesn't sound very realistic. 400 and you're going to double this year to 800 and you have some strategies. Okay, as a donor, I can believe that that's a real thing and I'm going to go with you on that journey. Number 3, I think it needs to be attractive because you are in fact out there with 30,000 other nonprofits in Missouri trying to get philanthropic dollars. So it has to have a little sizzle. Again, it's got to have some emotional language that invokes my feelings and my interests. So I want to help you. The donors are going to want to know, is what you're asking for realistic? Is this a funding opportunity that's real? If you know your programming is a lot more expensive, you just want to make sure that you put at the rationale for why it's so expensive, right? It's okay that it's expensive because some of the interventions that we have take a long time and they're challenging. It's okay to have that, but you need to make sure that the donor understands it does cost more, but here's the wonderful outcome that we get. And then the final one, transmittable. I know that sounds a little bit like a disease, but that's not what we're talking about here, right? Transmittable just means it's easy to share. Okay, it's easy to talk about. It's nice, easy language. You can read the case. You can get the feeling. You can even lift copy right out of there and drop it in an email. And it's going to be really easy to share with other people. So after you finished your first draft, before you share it with your case team, just take a look back at it and say, boy, did I hit all these marks? If you read it and you're not getting thrilled or you're not sure, sometimes I'll take the case and give it to somebody who doesn't know anything about our programs. And I'll say, would you just read this or some parts of this for me and just tell me, does this move you at all? Because people on the outside will tell you, man, this is really cool. Or, oh, it's okay. And then you're like, ooh, maybe I didn't get attractive. Maybe it's not interesting enough. So it'll help you. And you need to be critical of your own work. We have to really try always as fundraisers to be critical of our work and make it better. All right, so how do you use the case? Well, you use it with key stakeholders. As I told you early in the presentation, you are not going to mail this case out to people. It's a whopper, okay? You're going to use the language in it all year long, all the time, so that you don't have to write copy or much copy every time you do something. But your key stakeholders, obviously, are your senior staff, probably your program officers, anybody on the case team, and your board of directors. Okay, those are your main stakeholders when it comes to case development. And you engage them by asking them to read the entire case. One of the things I say to people will say, oh, Linda, my board's not going to sit down and read a 25-page document. And I'm like, oh, well, that's scary. They're in charge of your whole nonprofit and they won't read 25 pages. But what I say to boards a lot and to other people who are going to read it is just block out 45 minutes, get a glass of wine or whatever you drink, sit down, on a comfy chair and just read it. Just let yourself flow through it and see how you feel about it. And if you want to take some notes or you want to stop afterwards and send me a quick email and tell me what you thought, I'd really appreciate it. Okay. One of the challenging parts, of course, once they've read it, is they're going to provide feedback to you. Okay. And y'all know about feedback. If you ask for it, you have to listen to it. Now, that doesn't mean you have to change it, but you have to listen. And here's what I look for. If I've sent this out to 15 board members and 5 staff members, that's 20 people. If I hear 11 times the same piece of feedback, what did I hear? Oops, something's not right. Something's hitting the wrong button. This word doesn't feel good. We don't have enough DEI in here. It's not making any sense. Whatever it is, if you hear it 10 or 11, 12 times out of 20, you need to stop a minute and think about that. The other thing that you're going to get on the feedback loop is you're going to get your grammar police. Now, I used to be an English teacher. I'm a recovering grammar policeman. I understand, policewoman. And so what you're going to have to do is figure out what style guide you're going to use. It could be the New York Style Manual, whatever it is, because they're going to say, oh, the comma goes outside the quotation marks, not inside, right? Or they're going to say, this noun needs to be capitalized and not this one. And so you're going to have something that says, this is the style guide that we used. Otherwise, everybody thinks different things. And believe it or not, there are multiple ways to look at grammar and usage. So you're going to have something that you've said, this is the way we're doing it. You can use an online tool and say, we did the grammar check through this thing, and this is the filter that we're using. Otherwise, with your grammar police, you're going to, they're going to bat you around a little bit. And then how do you get buy-in? And always the best way to get buy-in is to ask for feedback and really listen to it, right? A lot of times I'll say, we get really good feedback from people. They're like, man, this is why I joined. This is why I'm so interested. This is why I want to help, or this is why I work here. If I get that kind of feedback, I know I'm in the ballpark. And usually there's a few things that I got wrong or that I missed. And that's the beauty of the team, is they're going to really give you that feedback. And when they do, they're going to feel like, and we hope, The whole case team did this. Maybe you wrote it, maybe you went back and sat at your computer, but we all built it. And you want to remind people, all this stuff, I just took what we all agreed to and I put it down on paper. And this is our document. And once we feel good about it, this information is going to be everywhere. Okay. All right. So let's use it. Obviously, first off is to get language that's inspirational to your donors, right? You want to be able to speak eloquently about what your nonprofit does and provide really great opportunities for your donors to get involved. You obviously want to educate and inspire your board. And so we really want to make sure that your board of directors reads and approves the case, okay? They are going to need to spend some time. We do ask them for that feedback, and then we revise it, and then we want to have an approval of the staff and board, because then we've all agreed this is the language we are all going to try to use. Okay, we're going to lift stuff right out of this case, both when we speak, when we write, when we send emails. This is the way we're going to talk about it, and that really helps, again, to create this holistic messaging that's clear and clean and consistent, and you really want that. And then you can use it in all your key materials, things like brochures, your annual reports, your grants, major gift proposals, websites, social media, any place you need copy, and of course, giving days, right? So if you have a case for support, right, you're going to be able to pull stuff out of there and drop it into the emails that you're sending out, to the page that you have set up, when you're calling donors to ask for support or leadership gifts. This copy is going to really help you, okay? All right, I think we're doing okay on time. I want to make sure I get through this quickly enough so we can answer questions. All right, so now we've talked about generically how to build a case for your nonprofit. And you may say, well, Linda, Giving Day's in May. I don't know if I'm going to have time to do all that. And you may not. You may need to make a mini case to start just around one program, but at least you have some guidance on how to do that. All right, so now let's talk a little bit about your case for Give STL Day. First of all, I really believe that if you're going to set a goal, and you should, you want to make a case for the full day. Our goal for Give STL Day is to raise X dollars. But remember, you want to say X dollars that's going to do this specific thing. We had a client do a giving day, and it was $48. It was $48.35, or maybe it's $48 to provide shelter, food, diapers, and formula for a mom and baby who were homeless for a night, $48. And they decided to do 1,200 nights. That was their case for the day. And so you could give $48 and support one mom for one day. You could give $480 and do 10 moms for a day or 10 nights. And then they worked toward getting to 1,200 nights. And I thought that was so smart, because my $48 really felt like it counted. $480, $4,800, like all kinds of things felt important. And then seeing all those nights together shows we just all are in this together to try to change the world and to support women who are trying to make their lives better for themselves and their children. I thought it was really sharp. So you want to make a case for the full day. Don't be afraid to set a challenging goal. Now, I would say don't set a ridiculous goal. You want to set a challenging goal. And one way to do that is to count every dollar and every donor that you're going to try to get to respond that day. Now, I know you're not going to know a lot of these people. There's a lot of peer fundraising that's going on through Give STL Day, but you are going to try to look at the donors you already have. Some of them you'll ask in advance, and you're going to want to try to count. You're going to look at your historical data, how much have we been raising over time, and then you're going to want to try to project a number that you know you can hit, but that will be a good hard stretch, right? If you hit the goal too early, people are like, oh, good, they got it, they stop giving. And so we want people to be inspired to go further, but we want to make sure we hit the goal, because not hitting the goal, of course, reduces our credibility. So getting that goal right by counting donors and dollars and data is really, really important. And then break the goal into those bite-sized real segments. That $48 provides that one night of support, or how many nights you're trying to get. One thing I find sometimes that our nonprofits don't do very well is to get people inspired in advance, right? I got to tell you, I may love your programming, but I may think of you as somebody that I give to at the end of the year, or I give through your gala. And so if you want me to do something extra, or you want me to do something on Give STL Day, you want to socialize that with me, right? You want to call me. You want to get me to coffee if I'm a bigger donor and talk to me about what you're trying to accomplish that day, right? We're trying to raise, $27,000 on Give STL Day, 27,530. Oh my goodness, that's a pretty specific goal. What are you trying to do? Then you can lay out your case for that donor, and you could even say, I really hope you'd be interested in participating. You could even give a leadership gift, right? And then you can start to really have a conversation because you've done your casework. But socializing with people in advance is going to make your Give STL Day much more effective than just putting it out there and just in that 24 hours kind of make it, run as fast as you can on the little hamster wheel and hope you can turn it. A lot of this is socializing with people in advance. It's always good to get some plants if you have some top levels. If you're trying to get 5,137 to do something and you need 4 of those, that's part of your campaign. You want to try to get some plants that will help you with that, because those kinds of gifts probably aren't going to come in easily on a giving day. All right. It's always great to get some matching dollars. If you can raise 20,000, somebody will match it 20,000. It is going to inspire it. And I would say don't lead with the match. Always lead with the giving opportunity around your programs, and then use the match as the bonus, right? You use the match as the bonus. Don't try to get them to feel excited because their gifts are going to be matched. Feel excited because they're going to change someone's life. Oh, and I can double the numbers of lives I'm helping because somebody's matching my gift. Okay, so remember, the matching gift is the bonus, not the actual pitch. Okay, and then I think you have to get your board on board. If you're really going to have an effective Give STL Day, the board needs to get excited and to buy in with you, that on the day they're going to get in there with you and make phone calls and send emails, encourage their friends. It really makes a big difference if other people are helping you solicit in this 24-hour period. All right, so I'm going to give you an example, and it's going to go back to our original set of numbers that we saw in one of those early slides. So we're going to say on our page, our goal for Give STL Day is $20,100. So I did a little math, and it basically says if $67 provides 1 hour of vital therapy for a child recovering from PTSD, and most of our kids need 12 hours of therapy to begin to see improvement, that's $804 per child. Now I want you to sit with that for just a minute. If you just say, hey, we're having Give STL Day, come on and support our great program helping kids struggling with PTSD, that's great. That's really nice. But if you say this, $67 does this specific thing, now I can picture that child. I might have been that child, right? I might have had my own PTSD and not have been treated. And now I can pay it forward by giving. And you've made it really clear exactly how I can help you. And I find that to be significantly more compelling than give $50 on Give STL Day because we do good work with kids, right? This is much meatier and might even make me go further. I might be, I was going to give $100, but let's see, 67 times 2, that's, I don't know, 134, whatever it is. Maybe I'll do 2. Maybe I'll do 3 because I want to help the kids. Now we're no longer talking about dollars and donations, transactions. We're talking about people who need help, who need hours of therapy. Okay. And then you could do something like, our goal is to provide therapeutic support today from Give STL Day for 25 of our kids who need it most. So 804 provides that 12 hours of therapy to help a child begin to see improvement times 24 of our beloved kids. That's $20,100. And if you can get a matcher who will match that, now you're supporting 50 kids at $40,000. Now, all of a sudden, when you've asked your matcher, you can say that. With your $20,100, you'll support 25 kids and you'll inspire other donors to help us support another 25. And now you're getting some real power. The donors are like, wow, we can really, and then they're going to ask you questions like, how many kids are there? How many hours do they need? And, they're going to get inspired because they're going to go, I can really help. My money really makes a difference. So getting people really focused on exactly what you're trying to accomplish is going to move your Give STL Day to a whole new plane. At least I certainly hope so. All right. So understanding the impact of cultivation. This is really important. We find a lot with our clients that the donors that they have, especially if they haven't had much of a fundraising program or don't have much fundraising staff, they complain a lot about the fact that the nonprofit only shows up excuse me, when they need money. I don't ever hear from them, Linda, unless they're on my doorstep with their hand out, right? Unless they're sending me an email saying, I need you to sponsor. Unless they're sending me an online ask and this thing and ask me for this and ask me for that. And it just doesn't feel good to donors. They get frustrated. So what I'm going to challenge you to do, I'm not just going to encourage you. I'm going to challenge you. This is February, whatever day it is, 22nd or whatever. All right. I'm going to challenge you between now and when you work on this day in May. How much cultivation can you get done with your individual and donor groups? And to do it, you're going to have to prepare some strategies. And I know you guys have other jobs, so I'm not saying do nothing but cultivate between now and then. But if you cultivate people, that means to show them, A, that you care about them, and B, how their gifts have made an impact. If you show them those things before you make the ask comes off so much more smoothly. Just the other day, I got a phone call. Oh my goodness, one of my very favorite ones. Brian. Brian is I'm going to brag on him in public. He's going to die. He is the CFO at Starcloth Disability Institute. And I gave a gift. And I had a busy day. And that night I noticed a voicemail that I didn't know the number of. So I opened it up and it was this lovely, fairly long message from Brian. And he said, Linda, oh my gosh, thank you so much for giving to whatever I gave to, I can't remember. It really means a lot to us. And your work at Let's Build Hope with us has been so significant. And I just wanted to stop and just really let you know, I mean, you really are making a difference in the lives of people with disabilities, and you're really important to us. And I just want to thank you. And that was the whole message. And I hung up the phone. It was late in the day and I was really tired. And I was like beaming. I was like, oh my God, that felt so good. And I thought to myself, that's how our donors feel. I know how you make the sausage. I know what Brian was doing. He was stewarding me. He was cultivating me, right? He's going to ask me again at some point. But you know what? When they ask me again, I'm going to remember that great feeling that I have, that I had when he called and left that message. And I'm going to want to do more, right? I'm going to want to go further for them, because not only do I love their cause, and I love supporting people with disabilities, but I also really just like the way they treat me. And I really like Brian, right? And so all those things can happen if you identify your donors and donor groups and you get some strategies going for each group. So I would say between now and then, think about your top donors. This might be, you have to figure out how many you can handle between now and May. How many donors can you call and just have a moment of thanks and have a moment of impact? Just tell them something cool that's happened because they've helped with their support. Okay, it'd be great to do that. Just thank you calls. You're going to get a lot of voicemails. People don't always pick up their phones because they can see who's calling. But I have to tell you, a voicemail like the one I got from Brian can be really, really impactful and can make a difference when you get into ask mode. Okay. And then do that also for, you kind of layer this cultivation. How else can I go to cultivate large groups of donors? Let's say you have hundreds of people who give between $0 and $300 or $500. Maybe it's an e-blast that says, did you know you've changed a life today with your giving, blah, blah, blah. And you can explain the wonderful things that are happening, right? And even though you can't talk to all of those donors, maybe who give those smaller gifts, you can send them something that says, your gifts are making a difference. Here's where we're headed. Thank you so much. One key strategy when you're cultivating and stewarding is do not ever, on pain of death, ask when you're cultivating. Okay? Don't ask people when you're telling them how grateful you are and showing them how their gifts are making a difference. Those things are separate things, so keep them separate, right? Whenever I get an ask while someone is thanking me, I feel frustrated because I'm like, oh, you don't really mean thank you. You just want my money, right? But if you're doing that cultivation, right? If you're sharing things about your programs and how we're changing lives and saving lives, and then I get an ask, and then you say thank you, all of those things feel separate and linear, like this makes sense, like any good relationship would. You will need to use a calendar to create a good flow of these touches between now and then, and I'm going to show you some things to think about on that. You'll have to decide how many cultivation touches you can actually provide. How many can I do? I know you have other jobs. I know you have things you have to do. So you want the cultivation and stewardship pieces to be meaningful and good touches. Don't slap it together. I'd rather have you do one and do it really well than try to do 4 and just, kind of make a mess of it because you're in such a hurry and you're working so hard. One other thing I will tell you when you're cultivating, you can do, is you can drop opportunities without asking. Right? Really commonly when I talk to donors, I will say, man, I cannot tell you how much your giving means to us. I don't know if you know it, but we're serving about 267 kids every week. And because you're giving, we're able to do that. I'm not sure if you're aware or not, but it costs $67 for an hour of therapy and about 25 hours for our kids to begin to see any impact. And then I keep right on talking. There's no ask. There's no perceived ask. I just put in front of him a number that later he will see, and he'll be like, oh yeah, she said it was $67. And so already I'm getting an idea of how much things cost at your place. And I'm considering, maybe I could do that, or maybe I could do 25 hours of that, or whatever it is. So float those numbers when you're cultivating, just don't ask. Okay, just don't let that get messed up. All right. Now, this is a little bit of a concept. I didn't learn this, you guys, till I was like 18 years in. It took me a while to understand it, but donor credit is a thing. So here's how I want you to think about it. How much time in a year will your donor spend interacting with you in any way? Remember that anytime you use any of their time, whether that's reading an e-blast, opening an invitation to your gala, attending your events, meeting with your CEO for coffee, opening their receipt and reading that. If it's wrong, they have to call you. Every time you interact with the donor, you're using some donor credit, some of that time. So when you make touches to donors, you want to make sure that they're meaningful. I have found, since the internet really got involved in fundraising, when I started, there really wasn't much going on in 1995. But as soon as the internet got out there and we started being able to send blast emails and blast everything in social media, we would hear people say things like, Linda, it's free. It doesn't matter if we send a bunch of stuff. Here's the problem. It doesn't matter to you, but it matters to me if you're gunking up my email box every week. Okay. I'd rather have one good touch than 4 just because it's free. Okay. So be really careful with your touches. Now, I want you to look at this list. You see something that might happen with your major donors or a board member. The board member is going to go to 4 board meetings a year minimally, 1 event plus the save the date plus the invite, 2 newsletters, an annual report, 4 e-blasts, 1 cocktail event. That's 15 touches. And with a major donor, you haven't even started your moves yet, those processes to move them toward the organization and a gift. So you have to think about, how are your donors experiencing your nonprofit? Is it a consistent flow? Is it too much? Is it too little? Is it ask, or is it an ask and then some stewardship and then 2 or 3 pieces of cultivation and then another ask? Okay, so building a calendaring is a really important part of having a healthy fundraising program. You do not want to beat your donors over the head with too much information, because you think, well, it can't be too much. It can. All right. You want to make sure that these touches are helpful and that they're intertwined in a way that's going to be meaningful and delightful, honestly, to your donors. Now, this is a calendar that I pulled together, and I want to just give you a sample. And again, you're going to get all these slides. So notice across the top, and our little bar is in the way for me here, but you can see a little bit. Each section of our calendar, January to June, has a donor group at the top, and it's the board, it's the major donors, it's general donors, the giving club, foundations and corporations. And what you want to do is you want to write in each one of those months, what touch or ask are those donors going to get? And then you can see, how is your board experiencing you? How are your major donors experiencing you? How are your foundations and corporations experiencing you, right? Notice that they're not the same thing for everybody. Not everybody gets a call of thanks. Some people get an e-blast. Not everybody is going to participate in the Give STL Day watch party that goes to certain people, but maybe not to others. Maybe everybody is going to get an impact update in June after it's over, but for your major donors and your board member, it's going to be high touch. That means it's hand signed by the CEO and has a love note on it, right? It's not just an email update that maybe your donors who give smaller gifts, and there's more of them, will get. So building a calendar like this is a great way to get a feeling for donor credit and how your donors are going to experience you before, during, and after Give STL Day. And I really want you to see that the day is in here, right? But the call of thanks, the white paper in advance, the ask itself, the watch party, the impact update, that shows you kind of natural building, right, upon what you've done before, not just not talking to people and then saying, oh, by the way, today's Give STL day, send your bucks, right? Send your money. Okay, so I think I got a little bit early, Emily, but hopefully we have some questions that people can also give us some feedback on what they are thinking.
That was amazing, Linda. Thank you so much. I know that I was ferociously taking notes as you talked about so many things that the community foundation needs to be doing, and a lot of stuff that was new to me. So thank you.
You're so welcome.
I just want to remind everybody that you're welcome to drop your questions in the chat or go ahead and come off mute to ask Linda directly. We did have one question come through in the chat from Melanie. Melanie asks, can you provide more examples of how and with who you engage when socializing with key donors?
Okay, how and with whom you engage when socializing key donors? That's a great question. Well, it sort of depends on the donor, okay? So if these are major donors or board members and your development coordinator or development director even, you're going to want to talk to the primary partner, the person who's most connected to that donor in your nonprofit, and make sure you're the right person. Don't get hung up on the major donors need to be talked to. I need to do it all. You may not. You're going to have to figure that out. So you may say, I'm going to look at my top 10 donors. I'm going to talk to my CEO, my board chair, and I'm going to say, are these people I can call and start socializing Give STL Day? Or is that over my pay grade? And if it is, don't be freaked out by that, guys. Sometimes, it's kind of that peer-to-peer thing. The CEO talks to the CEO, right? So don't get, in a wad if that's not how it goes. And then work that through. Most of the time, the fundraisers can deal with the general donors. Often they can deal with the foundation folks, but you got to be careful. If Elka at the Sci Foundation and your boss are big buds, that's not your call. Okay, that's your boss's call. But here's the thing: your move is to get your boss to make the call, right? Because that's the thing. Your boss is busy. She's running the company. So you are still part of that process. You just may not be the one. Hopefully that helps. If you have a deeper part of that question, ask me some more.
Thank you. Thank you. Sorry, I've moved my
Right, no,
screen
take your
around
time.
and lost the chat. Melanie also asked if we'd be able to share a template of the calendar that you showed on one of your last slides. I know we'll be able to share the PDF of this training, so thank you for that. But do you have a template we might also be able to put up on the Give Day website?
I am happy to do that. I can give you a template, or you can send me an email. I think, Emily, when you send my PowerPoint, if you just send my email, if you guys need tools or saw anything that you actually want the document that I have, I can send it to you. Happy to do that.
Great. That sounds good. And then there was a part of your presentation, Linda, where you were talking about being very specific about dollar amounts when figuring out what you wanted your ask to be. And I just wanted to make sure that we connected that to a feature offered to you all, to the nonprofits on Give STL Day. You have the ability to set donation amounts as part of editing your profile. And I just want to share my screen real quick to be able to give you all a preview of what these look like. Please forgive my crazy screen right now. Let me go ahead and make that a little bigger. And can you all see how it says checkout process at the top? So this is a preview for an organization who did this last year, Gateway to Hope. They added in a few different donation levels. So you can see that they've done 10, 25, 50, all the way up to $2,500. And they've named those donation levels. So whenever the donor comes to your profile, when the giving period is open, they can select one of these amounts. And that's where you can use that technique that Linda mentioned to be really specific and to not shy away from like an ugly number or a number that's not a round number. So if it really is $67 to, feed and clothe and provide diapers to, a parent and child for a night, you could put that on there in these donation amounts. And I think you can have up to 20 donation levels. That might be kind of overkill. Maybe keep it to 2 to 5, that kind of thing. But this relates exactly to what Linda was talking about. So I just wanted to make sure to show it.
That's super cool. I didn't know you had that. Awesome.
And that's totally optional, but you can add those under your profile overview on the Give STL Day website. And then if anybody else has questions for Linda, you are welcome to come off mute or drop them in the chat. We will hang out for a few minutes, but if there aren't any further questions, we'll just be able to give everybody back a portion of their afternoon.
How about that? I didn't know how fast it was going to go, but I didn't want to tell you a bunch of stuff you didn't need. So hopefully that was helpful.
I think we have a question of participants raising their hands.
Okay, I'm seeing a question in the chat from Maggie asking, is there a level you recommend targeting for a big giving day? Like more items under $75 or nothing more than $500?
Yeah, I would be careful to do that. I mean, you certainly want to know your donor base. You don't want to be dropping $10,000 levels on there if you don't have anybody who gives $10,000. But if you know that it costs $5,237 and you've got all those giving boxes, I wouldn't shy away from that. I agree with Emily. I wouldn't fill all those boxes, but I might go a little further. I might go 6 to 8, because the thing is, you don't know, especially based on the cultivation and the people that are coming through the peer solicitation, what they have to offer if they get really moved. So it sort of depends on what your donor base normally does. You can look at an average gift, but my goal is if your average gift is normally about $70, $75 on Gives Day, then something at the 93 or the 105 that's right above that has some meaning instead of just $75 might actually get everybody to upgrade, because they would go to that number because you said $93 does X, right? And our average gift last year was $75, but this year if you did 93, you might get everybody to upgrade. You don't think that's much, but when it goes across your entire day, it can turn into a few bucks.
Yep, absolutely. It can definitely add up. And I think I saw that somebody who was on video had their hand up.
Yes, that question actually came from Lisa, and she wants to know, what are your thoughts on promoting only one program on Gives Day?
Yeah, I'm a big believer in that. I think you want to get people really focused in. And sometimes people say, well, Linda, what if they don't like that program? Well, you're not raising $1 million on Gives Day, guys. This is going to be a reasonable, good day, but a moderate day. And so helping people understand something that you do really more fully pulls them into the programming. And I don't think most people who give on Gives Day are going, oh, you're only raising money for that program, I'm not going to help you. I would think that would be really rare, because it's not, most cases, thousands and thousands of dollars in individual gifts. I'm not giving you $10,000 or $20,000. You might have a few people who do that, but I don't think it's going to limit you. I actually think it's going to strengthen you, because it shows this program has in this $40,000 or $20,000, whatever the bucket is that you decide for the day, some real impact for a reasonable amount of money, and people like that, because otherwise it's just, again, starts to feel like their $35 or their $75 doesn't really move the needle. They're just doing it, their friend asked them, or they like you guys and here's some money. But really what you're trying to do is inspire them by showing them sort of the depth and breadth of the cool things that you guys are doing. So I do think it's pretty good to go one. I also say you get confused sometimes when donors look at all those different things. It's like, oh, well, do I have to give that level to get that program? I think that gets a little confusing. I've seen that at gala sometimes too, where each of the different levels is a different program. And so I want to give around 1,000, but the program I like is at 5. And I'm like, well, then I won't give, because I don't want to do that, So just be a little careful with that. All that mixture can mess people up.
Yeah, thank you. And I just wanted to remind everybody that on your Give STL Day profile, you not only have the option to add program information, you can also kind of reinforce that message about a specific program by adding multimedia, such as photos and videos. Please, please, please do that if you are able. And then you can also add alert text, which will show up as an orange bar at the top of your profile, where you can talk even more about that program or that, single focus that you want to promote.
Yeah, and I would reinforce that. The more information you can have on that page, the more likely you are to inspire someone to go further. If they get to the page, they're probably going to give, right? Somebody's moved them to get there. But a great video, I mean, especially just a short one, or a great piece of copy that says, 98% of the people that come through our program have this impact. When you give $93 today, you help one of those people or provide one of those hours. I think that will make a difference. It's worth the effort.
Hey, Miss Linda, my name is Savon. The company I work for is called CyberUp. We basically help people get careers in cybersecurity.
Mm-hmm.
I think one thing I've always kind of struggled with is we don't have like a good emotional pool. And I was trying to think of a good theme to go with our case study. Mm-hmm. And the theme that I kind of came up with inspired by your things was holding the elevator. because we're always talking about taking people to the next level, but even that doesn't really have like an emotional draw to it. So I just was trying to see what you thought about that.
Yeah, that's a good point. Can you tell me just a little, I actually know CyberUp because I know Tony for years. Can you tell me just a little bit about the people part of that program? Because it's not just computers. How are the people connecting to that?
Got you. Well, actually, CyberUp has 3 different programs. We have a youth program where we have volunteers teach kids about data literacy. Then we have a training program, which prepares people for our apprenticeship program, where we place those candidates in careers that are cyber related. So the way it kind of channels or funnels in an ideal world is hopefully we get the children excited about computer literacy and cybersecurity. Then they go through the training, hopefully when they're of age out of high school, and then we get them an apprenticeship.
Right. I think you can make the connection. I don't think you have to have a direct connection. When I was listening to you talk, I had a couple thoughts. One, for the kiddos, my kids had computers from the day they showed up at school, right? And you know, they are going to be people who are moving around in the tech world. Like they're going to be moving around in a world where technology is everything they touch, right? From here on out, we're never going to not have the phone and Amazon. That's what we live with. So you can immediately say that when the kids come through your program or get this training, they're gonna be able to move around the world more effectively, especially from an education perspective. I'm going to do better at high school and college because I'm going to be good at that. And then I'm also, if I have aptitude, maybe find a career. So you want to paint the picture of the future of the kids. Don't feel like you can't make the connection to, you know, kids who are great at technology. There's probably go online, Google 10 things that, you know, so make that connection, because I will buy that with you. I know right now the kids are still just in the, you know, they're learning the basics, but you can take me there. And the idea that you're helping an adult get a job, that's enough for me, right? Because I'm a person who's like, I want everyone to have a job. I want everyone to be able to.
And then it's not just a job, it's a career. Like cybersecurity is starting off at $50,000, $60,000 a year. And that means a lot for, I mean, especially for myself, before I started working for CyberUp, I was barely making $20,000 a year.
Perfect example. And so if you say that to me, and I'm a person who wants to make sure, I had a lot of hand. When I started fundraising, I made $23,000 a year. My kids were eating ramen noodles and pancakes. I mean, we had no money, right? I mean, we really didn't. And I had a great mentor, and that's what moved me forward, right? So to say that what you are offering is changing people's lives, that's what you got to think of when you write the case. Saving lives and changing lives, and then just paint that picture. You don't have to draw a direct black and white connection. When we do this thing happens. It's this more global thing, but it's still emotional. When I was listening to you, I was like, oh, you're helping kids get computer literate and helping people get careers. Yeah, I'd fund that, you know, so yeah, you got it.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Well, look at all the little boxes. Hi, you guys.
Yeah, I switched us just in case anybody else wanted to come off video.
Yeah, I sort of say, if you want to come off video and like wave at me, you know how lonely it is here in my office. There's literally not one person here. Not one person. I'm all in here gesticulating all by myself. Hi. Thank you. Hi, Diane. I see you down there.
Greg, you're welcome to come off mute and ask Linda that question directly.
Hello, Linda. I just wanted to ask you a quick question, and that is there a particular social media channel you think is more effective at helping you create your ask?
Oh, I just think that depends probably on the age of your donor base. I mean, we all know Facebook's for the old folks. I'm on that, right? Instagram, not so much, right? So you're looking sort of at your donor type. If your donors are a little older, they may not be doing Instagram. LinkedIn is probably a good thing if you have a lot of corporate connections or connections through that. So I would be looking at sort of the type of donor base that you have and thinking, where do they hang out from a social media perspective?
Okay.
Good question, by the way.
Thank you.
This is actually something that we talked about in our training that we held yesterday with Splice House, maximizing the reach and value of your content. We discussed that ideally you'd be on, you know, all the social media platforms, but that's not realistic, you know, for a variety of reasons. So I definitely agree, Linda, with what you said, figuring out what's most effective for you. And then also don't forget kind of like the works of the different platforms. For example, you can't, links are not clickable on Instagram posts, but since your Give STL Day profile has a unique short URL, w.givesday.org/ whatever you've indicated, like ours is STLCF, so it's really short. It's not too bad to have to put that in an Instagram post because it's just short. Alrighty, anybody else have any questions for Linda?
They all got it all the first time,
I
Emily.
guess they did. You've
That's
blown
what
their
happened.
minds.
Oh, there's
Lisa,
somebody.
go ahead. Can't hear you, Lisa.
Thank you. I can't hear you. Nope, I think you must need to turn your volume up. You're not muted, I can't see, but maybe your volume's down.
Sorry, Lisa. If you
Yeah,
want to
sorry.
type it in, we'll read it out loud for you.
Hey, hey.
Also, just in case anybody else missed it, apparently we have a tornado warning
Oh my,
coming. So
boy.
I had been tuned out from my phone notifications this past hour, and now I think I'm gonna go home a little early to miss some traffic. So
Right. Hey, I saw Maggie raise her hand. Hi, Maggie.
Hi, how are you?
I'm good.
I was wondering for the to thank donors after they've given
Mhm.
on a day when so many donors give at the same time. Is there like a limit to when you can reach out to thank people for what they've done, the difference they've made?
I don't think so. I would say, and we're going to do I think our whole next session I'm doing for you guys is stewardship, but I'll give you a little freebie here. When I do any kind of a give day, I usually do 3 or 4 touches in 30 days.
Okay.
Because I feel like you have a short window, especially for the new donors that show up, to really capture them. So I think everybody comes at it the day after, and they should. Like a lot of our Gives Day stuff, it's like memes on Facebook saying thank you, silly things, text messages, phone calls. But then those 30 days after, is there a really well-written, thank you letter? Is there a welcome packet? Is there a white paper? Is there an invitation to a non-ask event? Anything that you can do to really try to pull them in, because you got them for a minute and then like 30 days later, they forgot you, But if you're the one that's consistently saying, we appreciate you, we love you. I actually just gave a gift to a charity I'd never given to the other day saw something cool on LinkedIn, and I sent some money, and I got almost an immediate thank you. And then I got about 2 or 3 days later, sort of an e-newsletter. And then about another 2 or 3 days later, a call from the development officer thanking me and also saying, I'm really curious about what motivated you to give. Many things. If you want to call me back, here's my number. So 3 touches, probably 9 or 10 days, but they're top of mind, right? She's lifted their profile for me. So I would just say, make sure you make them meaningful and enough in that 30-day window, because past that, I think if you don't grab them by then, they'll have given up.
Okay.
Yeah, good question.
Can you all hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, going back to the LinkedIn question, do you feel like LinkedIn is better for corporations and foundations, or it's just truly based off of kind of where your donor base is coming from?
I actually think it's partially relational. I mean, I think there's the piece that your organization is going to put out, and I think that's fine on LinkedIn. I see all kinds of giving opportunities on LinkedIn, and if I like them, if I see a great video, I'll respond. This one was getting furniture for people, like their first home, and they need a bed and blah, and it was just like, whoo, right down to the basics of Maslow's, and I got it. I liked it. But then I also think, if you have teams of people who are soliciting with you on Gives Day, they need to go to the platforms. I go to all mine. When I do a Gives Day, I do my Facebook page, I do my LinkedIn page, I do text messages on my phone, on my contacts. I'm using all of that. So don't feel like your teams can't go to all the platforms, and I wouldn't avoid them, especially LinkedIn and Facebook are so easy. It's just copy and paste, and there you go. I would say just make sure the copy is good, meaningful, no errors, that kind of thing. I will say if I see errors in people's stuff, I kind of don't want to give, I'm kind of like, you can't type. you can't proofread, I'm a little nervous about you, so just make sure, I'd rather have less copy that's good and emotional and really well written, type real clean, than a lot of stuff. I think sometimes we overdo the amount of content we're trying to share on a social platform.
Sure. Okay. Because I work with a young organization, and I think our following is very young, like millennials and Gen X or Gen Z. I'm sorry.
Uh-huh.
And I'm just really trying to figure out, because I'm used to, working with LinkedIn, but the organization hasn't historically. And so I'm trying to kind of gauge whether or not we should push that way or not.
Yeah, I think it's worth, because it's probably a low time thing. I think you can probably do some testing on Give STL Day and sort of see. The other thing I would say, the challenging part of working with donors in your donor base is there are a lot of younger people who are interested in your cause, but unfortunately they just don't have much money. So at the end of the day, right now, the older generation, I'm on the cusp of the baby boomers. We still have it all, partially because we don't have kids who are eating it all. Like, when your kids stop eating all your money, you're like, oh my God, I got a raise, So you literally have money you can give away. Whereas, when my kids were young or going to college or needing braces, even if you're middle income and you want to give, you don't have much because they're just eating it all, So that's the other thing to think, is there may be people who are interested, but are they the people who can write some kind of a check, do some kind of a credit card swipe? So, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
And don't forget that minimum donation on Give STL Day is just $10.
Okay.
All right, well, I'm seeing some people drop off, which is totally fine. But it seems like the questions have slowed down as well. So I'm going to go ahead and stop the meeting recording.